The next division is promotion board operations. We are responsible for building and executing air reserve component promotion and continuation boards. We prepare and push all of the Air Reserve Personnel Center memorandums. So those are your convening notices, as well as the release promotion messages. And then any updates to officer promotion guidance, we'll also push that out. We handle all the board builds in AFPROMs and in EBOS. AFPROMs is the Air Force Promotion System, and EBOS is the Electronic Board Operating Scoring System. That's the system we use while we're in board and board members are scoring records. So we upload all eligible officer records into EBOS. We manage EBOS operations pre, in, and post board. We also update any senior rater ID, but only if the member is meeting a promotion board. We prepare and outbrief board reports and promotion stats to the National Guard Bureau, Chief of the Reserve of the Air Force, the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force of Manpower and Reserve Affairs, and also the Undersecretary of the Air Force. We prepare and send promotion scrolls to the Pentagon for SECAF and POTUS approval, as well as Senate confirmation. The last division is the Promotion Policy Division, and they are the Reserve of the Air Force OPR for the Reserve Officer Personnel Management Act, meaning they ensure that we are holding the boards and complying with Title 10. They also ensure that we are doing things also in accordance with AFI and other policy. This division prepares promotion-related advisories for the Board of Correction of Military Records, so your BCMRs, and the Evaluation Reports Appeal Board, which are your ERABs. They conduct an average of 400 post-board counseling sessions per year for our officers that were non-selected. And they also build and manage all the Special Selection Board and Special Boards, which are our SSBs and SBs, as well as the letters to the board. So any officer that submits a letter to the board, they receive those, review them, and process them. And they get roughly about 800 letters annually. Here's an overview of the type of boards conducted by the Selection Board Secretariat here at ARPC. As you can see, mandatory boards. These boards are governed by law, meaning all eligible officers must meet the board. They cannot opt out. These boards consider all eligible officers in and above the promotion zone. IPZ signifies the officers in the zone, and this is their first mandatory board, whereas APC is above the zone, and this is the officer's second or more look. ARPC executes 5 mandatory boards per year. However, for promotion to first lieutenant and captain, eligible officers need a process, not an actual board, and this process occurs twice a year. Position vacancy boards, which are PV boards, are held to consider exceptionally well-qualified officers for early promotion. Officers must be nominated by their senior rater and must be the sole occupant of a higher graded position. Special selection boards and special boards are boards conducted by law to correct an error. They may be a BCMR or ERAB directed or approved by the ARPC Selection Board Secretariat Directorate. These boards are held as necessary in conjunction with a mandatory board. The last board is the Selective Continuation Board. These boards are held at the Secretary of the Air Force's discretion. These boards are typically held following the 04 and 05 board with the intent to retain twice deferred officers in specific AFSCs or specialty codes. If an officer is selected and elects to continue, they are continued for the length of time outlined in the Secretary's MOI, which can vary between 2 to 3 years. They will also continue serving until they meet their mandatory separation date. Officers in a continued status may still be eligible to meet a promotion board if they meet the Air Force Reserve eligibility requirements. Here you can see a timeline of the entire promotion process. For each board, we typically start building around 225 days prior to the board convening. Most promotion boards are scheduled to be convened for 1 week. Typically it's a Monday through Friday, but for our larger boards, we may go into Saturday. The larger boards that we do host are the Reserve 05 and 06 boards, as well as the Guard 04 and 05 boards. In the post-board phase of the process, the length of time to obtain approval and Senate confirmation may vary. However, this time Somebody has a hot mic. Okay, I'll just continue. However, as you can see, this just gives you a general outline of the timeline post-board. So once we do our outbrief, we typically do that 4 weeks post-board, and then once we've done our outbrief, it's kind of a waiting game. We follow up continuously to make sure that the package is still moving, and any corrections that may come back, we do that in a timely manner. So we get asked a lot of times, where is the information regarding promotion boards? Important information related to ARC officer promotions is located out on MyPERS. So if you go out to MyPERS and click Air Reserve, Officer, and then the promotions, you will see a slew of information. Promotion information is typically listed per rank, so all the customer has to do is click on the appropriate rank for the most current information regarding boards and announcements. So out here we post all of our ARPCMs. We have the board schedule. We put pre and post board information, and then there's other resources pertaining to officer promotions, which is your AFIs and other guidance. So here you'll see the selection board schedule for the calendar year 2020. This information is posted on the MyPERS website annually. We just pushed an update because due to the COVID-19, it has shifted a lot of the boards to the right. So as you can see in May, we're actually combining 3 boards. That's not typical, but we have to get it done. So we're doing the Guard FedRec as well as the Guard Major Lieutenant Colonel board and an SB SSB board at that same time. One anomaly on this calendar is the Air National Guard GEO FedRec board. Typically this board is hosted by AFPC, but again, due to COVID-19, we have decided that we will host that board this year. All Air Reserve Personnel Center memorandums are ARPCMs. We post those for the convening notices and public releases. Again, these are posted on MyPERS, and they are provided to all of the FSSs and NPFs out there. Convening notices are typically posted and available 5 months prior to the board convening. We highly encourage for all FSS, NPF staff members that work officer promotions, any senior rater and commander, and any eligible officer that is meeting the board to read the ARPCM completely, because there's a lot of really good information in here. Included in the ARPCM is critical information such as eligibility factors, as you can see here. So when we typically build our boards, we build them based off of date of rank. The date of rank is used to determine what board an officer may be eligible to meet. So in this example, you'll see that the date of rank of 30 September 07 or earlier is for officers that would meet the VO413A or the WO413A. So the V indicates participating reserve members, and the W is your non-participating reserve members. The date of rank of 30 September 08 or earlier is for eligible officers who would be eligible to meet the UO413A board, which is your position vacancy board or the PV board. Additionally, in the convening notices, we have milestones that, if followed, will keep everybody on track with regards to due dates for officer promotion boards. We like to foot stomp to pay particular attention to the PRF due dates. The last update that officers can do for MIL-PDS before the board convenes, as well as the due date for the letters of the board. So time and grade refers to the number of years required in that grade before an officer can promote to the next higher grade. Members meet the board prior to time and grade requirements, so if promoted, they may be able to pin on either when they meet the time and grade requirement or public release date, whichever is later. However, a caveat to this is if an officer was selected for promotion and they don't have the time and grade, a senior grader can elect to accelerate a promotion. So for mandatory boards, Major to Lieutenant Colonel officers will meet the mandatory board at 6 years time and grade, and if selected and approved for promotion, will pin on at that 7-year time and grade point. For PV boards, for the Air Force Reserve Major to Lieutenant Colonel, officers must have 4 years time and grade to meet the board, and again, if selected and approved for promotion, they will promote effective the public release date or once they reach that 5 years time and grade, whichever is later. As you can see, the time and grade differs for the Guard. ARPC, we do not run PV boards for the Guard. This is done at the state level. And per the chart that you see here on the slide, officers can meet the PV board at that 3-year time and grade. So one of the eligibility criteria for all ARC officers is RASL time. So what is RASL? RASL is your reserve active status list. So an officer must have been on a RASL or active duty list, which is your ADL, for 1 year or a combination of these for 1 year prior to the board convening. So if an officer was coming from active duty into the Guard or Reserve and they did not have a break in service, as long as they had 1 complete year, they would be eligible to meet a board. Now, if there was a break in service, the member must have 1 full year on the RASL before they can be eligible to meet a board. All right, so PRFs, one of our favorite topics of discussion. PRFs are required for officers meeting a mandatory 05 or 06 promotion board. They are required if a senior rater is nominating an officer for a position vacancy board, or if the senior rater is submitting a do not promote PRF. For the 2-line PRF, the guidance, the most current guidance out there, is posted on MyPERS under Air Reserve Officer Promotion. This was a total force initiative, so please note, the RAGAF guidance differs from the ARC guidance. So when you are writing the PRFs for your ARC members, you want to make sure you're using the ARC guidance. ARC implemented the 2-line PRF effective last year for the Colonel's Board, which convened in October. And the biggest change is we went from 9 lines to 2 lines and how we stratify. So stratifications can only come from the senior rater, and on any PRF you can only have up to 2 stratifications. And the stratifications have to comply with the guidance that's out there. PRFs must be signed by the senior rater. This is fixed by policy. For officers serving in the grades of captain and major, the senior rater is the first colonel in the rating chain who is serving as a wing commander or equivalent. For officers serving in the grade of lieutenant colonel, the senior rater is the first GO in the rating chain. For more guidance or instruction, you can refer to the corresponding ARPCM for a particular board, or you can look at AFI 36-2406. Another foot stomp here for any officer that is on the RASL, meaning anyone who's in the ARC, comments on the PRF are mandatory. This is per AFI 36-2406, table 8.1, and I think it's line 12. It specifically says comments on PRFs are mandatory for RASL officers. So again, since all ARC officers are on the RASL, comments are mandatory. You don't have to have 2 full lines, but you have to have at least 1 bullet. So here's a look at the PRF. This example that we're showing you is a definitely promote PRF. And some things that I just want to point out is for section 5, which is your promotion zone, for the reserve, we leave this blank. For Guard and Reserve, we do not fill this block in. It is not necessary. Section 6, which is the group size, again, for the definitely promote, this is where your first stratification is going to be. If the senior rater elects to put a second strat in, the second strat is going to go in the comments section. So for the group size, you can type or handwrite the rank order for all officers awarded a definitely promote, or your DP. And this first strat right here is going to be based on the competitive category. So for example, we see the strat is 2 of 25 of 220. So the officer is ranked number 2 of 25 officers who've been awarded a DP from the senior rater. The senior rater has a total of 220 officers in this specific competitive category meeting the promotion board. So if there's any questions on this, I know sometimes it gets a little confusing. If there's any questions, please shoot me a message and we can explain this more. But that is your example of a DP PRF. So here's an example of a PV PRF. This slightly differs than your DP PRF example that we just saw. So for all position vacancy PRFs, you have to include the position number that member is sitting in. And this goes in the duty title section. The next difference is, again, in the group size. You can see the strat is different on here. So per promotion vacancy, you can type or handwrite the rank order for all officers nominated within each competitive category. So in this example, the senior rater is giving a 2 of 5. The officer, again, is ranked number 2 of 5 officers. So the senior rater had 5 officers that were eligible for PV, and this officer is ranked number 2. All right, so officer responsibility. Again, we foot stomp this when we release the ARPCM, the convening notice, and the releases. We encourage everybody to go out there and take a look at it. Make sure you're reading through it. Most of the questions we get asked are actually addressed in the ARPCMs. So we like to say help yourself before you come to us, but if you have a question and it's not addressed at all, absolutely hit us up and we will do what we can to help you out. Know the date of rank. It's very important for officers to know their date of rank and when they are eligible to meet a board. Again, this information is going to be in the ARPCM, so they can reference that. Review records. In order for officers to receive a fair review of their records, they need to make sure that they have everything included in their records. So the responsibility lies on the member. We do our best to do a check up front with eOSRs, which is the electronic officer selection record. If we identify something, we'll send a notification out through VPC, and the individual, the officer, will get it through MyPers, saying that we've reviewed the record and we've identified that something's wrong or missing. However, if an officer has been added to a board late, because we only do the eOSR, it's a one-time pull push, and actually the ARMS contractors help us with that. If they've missed that cutoff date when we do the push and they're added to the board late, they may not receive an eOSR notification in VPC. So we encourage everybody to don't wait to get a notification, but be proactive. So go out into PRADA, which is what the officers can go out and look at their officer selection record. And they want to make sure that they review to see if they can see all of their OPRs, any training reports, mandatory LOEs, and decorations. They want to make sure all that information is in their record. If they can see it in PRADA, then it will be visible for the board members when we are in board. Another thing we also encourage officers to do prior to the board convening is to review their officer pre-selection brief. The OPBs are sent out to the MPFs 145 days prior to the board convening, and they are supposed to be sent to all eligible members approximately 130 days prior to the board convening. So it's very important for them to go out there and take a look at the officer pre-selection brief, make sure that if they identify anything wrong, that they're being proactive in trying to get that corrected. They can go to their servicing MPF or MPS to get that corrected, or they can submit a ticket through MyPers. So here's a look at what PRADA looks like to the customer. Some solid advice, again, go out there and review PRADA records on a regular basis. Don't wait until you're eligible to meet a board. Again, when we pull records for the Promotions Selection Board, we pull them from ARMS, which for the customer is PRADA. It's the same thing, it's just a different way to view the record. If a person has been built to a board, they will be able to see their officer selection record in PRADA. So again, they want to make sure that they can see all of their OPRs, training reports, mandatory LOEs, decorations, all this stuff. They want to make sure that it's visible. So here's what an eOSR may look like for a member. Again, this is a one-time pull push of information, and it is to help officers identify if they have anything wrong or missing in their record. So again, it's very important for officers to come out here, if they get notified, take a look and try to make any corrections they can prior to the board convening. If they have not done their due diligence, if they have not tried to make corrections to their record prior to a board, they may not be eligible for an SB or an SSB. So again, it's very critical for officers to be proactive and try to make these corrections in a timely manner. All right, so I'm sure everyone has heard, for the line of the Air Force, we have new competitive categories. The ARC is going to be transitioning to the new line Comcats beginning in October, so for the Colonel Board. As you can see here, the line competitive categories have gone from 1 category to 6. The 6 categories allow for a more tailored development path for career fields across the line of the Air Force. The agility achieved in these new Comcats is critical for an ever-changing world. So we want to make sure we're promoting the right officers in the right career field to meet the Air Force's mission. So an officer's core AFSC determines what competitive category they are going to be meeting. So moving forward, it is important for eligible officers meeting a promotion board to look at their core flag ID and make sure it's correct. Any error with the core flag ID will result in the officer potentially meeting the wrong board in the wrong competitive category. So this is something new, and if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about the officer pre-selection brief. On the officer pre-selection brief, and this is going to be later on in my slides too, there is going to be some new fields out there for the officers, and the core flag ID is one of them. So without getting too far ahead, let me just talk a little bit about the officer pre-selection brief and then the officer selection brief. So again, OPBs are sent to the MPFs about 148 days prior to the board convening. The MPFs, it's their responsibility to pull the OPBs from AFCOMs and forward to the members. And if an officer has not received an OPB, they must contact their servicing MPS. ARPC PB will not forward any officer their officer pre-selection brief. This is the responsibility of the MPFs. So the OPB is a one-page snapshot of the career brief. We encourage again to review this information to make sure it is current and accurate. The OPBs must be corrected prior to the board convene date, and once 3 days prior to the board convening, our office will pull all of the officer pre-selection briefs, and when we pull them and put them into EBOS for scoring into the officer selection record, they now become the officer selection brief. So the OPB is what the members get. The OSB, officer selection brief, is what the board members see in the record. They're the same document, we just call them something different. So what do we want members to look at when they're looking at their officer pre-selection brief? Well, again, the newest thing is the core flag ID. We want to make sure the core flag is correct. If it is not correct, in the convening notice, there is guidance out there that tells officers how to get that corrected. They want to make sure their DE is reflected. All aeronautical flying data, that it's correctly showing the hours and the airframe that the officer may have been flying in. Board certs, this is only for medical professionals, and it will only reflect a board cert if an officer is sitting in an AFSC that has an H or M prefix. So even though you may be certified, if you don't have that M or H, it's not going to show yes on the officer pre-selection brief. However, board certs can go in your record. Again, all this information is in the ARPCMs. It tells you how to submit your board cert, so we can make sure that it is uploaded in EBOS for scoring. Decorations, assignment history, duty history, and then participation points. These are all things that the officers need to be looking at. Again, if an error is found after the board has convened, an officer may not be eligible for an SV or SSB. They have to be proactive. They have to try to make corrections prior to the board convening. If they've been actively working to correct the discrepancies prior to the board but were unable to get the discrepancies or the errors corrected, they may be able to submit for a BCMR or ERAB and may be found eligible to meet an SB or an SSB. Okay, so here is a quick look at an officer pre-selection brief. Some of the new areas that I've highlighted are, again, the core flag ID, which is circled in red. Again, you want to make sure that that is correct. If it's not correct, you're not going to be reflected in the right competitive category. For our line officers, the new line COMCAT, which is circled in blue here, it's going to be different. So you want to make sure that when the information is pushed out for the new line competitive categories, officers want to make sure that they're aligned in the right competitive category. And again, that's going to be part of the core flag ID. And then a new section also is the wounded warrior. This has not been on past officer pre-selection briefs. This is something new, but it is now going to be on future OPBs. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about letters to the board. Every eligible officer is afforded the opportunity to write a letter to the board. This is per law. So they can write a letter on any matter they feel the board should know. The letter must be submitted in good faith, and it should contain accurate information to the best of the officer's knowledge. Letters have to be received no later than 10 days prior to the board convening date. Any letters received after this due date will not be accepted or included in the member's OSR. Promotion policy will confirm receipt and provide any feedback or corrections needed to be made. If an officer has submitted a letter to the board within the 10-day window. No later than 10 days prior to the board convening. If for whatever reason they have to send it back for correction, we will still accept that letter because they met the deadline. Some reasons to write a letter is to explain any gaps in a record, any missing OPRs or decorations, why an officer may have had an unsat year, or any deployment information that may not be reflected in the officer's record. Officers cannot include anything in the letter to the board that contains information prohibited by SecAF. Again, this information is outlined in the ARPCMs, so if there's any questions, the member can reference that material or they can contact promotion policy. Officers can also request post-board counseling from VPC once the board results have been publicly released. Once an officer requests counseling, Promotion Policy Division will pull the member's record as met during the board. The technician will provide the counseling. They typically review the individual's record as it met the board, so as the board member saw it, and they will provide feedback on areas that they feel were strong or maybe areas that were weak in the member's record. What they cannot tell the officer is why they weren't selected for promotion. They are not privy to this information as they don't know why the board member scored the way they did. All they can do is offer a perspective on areas where maybe the officer can strengthen their record. Counseling is typically completed in approximately 4 to 6 weeks after the request has been received. Okay, some takeaways. If you're a member or you have a member that's meeting the board, again, have them read the ARPCM and know the milestones. Review their record online in Prada, or if they get an eOSR, review that on VPC. Again, they want to make sure their record is current and updated. If they find anything that's wrong with it, they need to take action immediately to try to correct it. Also, it's important for them to look at the officer pre-selection brief, and again, if they haven't received it, they need to contact their servicing MPF. If you have members that are IMA, AGR, lead, or VL PAD, because these members are assigned to active duty units, their servicing MPF is going to be the active duty MPF or the RAGAF MPF. If they're getting pushback from the RAGAF side of the house, what we ask is for them to get a POC and shoot it all our way, and we will call the MPF and we will walk them through the process. Many times our servicing RAGAF MPFs aren't aware that they have reserve members that they have to service. So when they go out and look at AFPROMs, if they aren't looking under the reserve hat, they may not see the information. So sometimes we kind of have to walk them through that. Okay, that looks like it is it for my briefing. I saw there were some questions that were popping up in the chat, but I honestly wasn't looking at them. So,
I got you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I got you too. I got it. This is Colonel Bridgman. Lieutenant Colonel Clay has been tracking all of this for us, so we are good to go. All right. So the first one is, when are you expecting the 06 ARPCM to be released?
So we have the ARPCM ready to go. However, we are waiting for approval on the new line competitive categories because we can't push the information out until we have SecAF approval. So we're just waiting for SecAF approval. Once we get it, which we anticipate it's going to be within the next week, we will push that ARPCM out.
So, Bridge, I was going to jump in here real quick. On the active duty side, the 05 board is a go. That just got announced, I think, this week. And I think that's what you guys were waiting on, was to make sure that they were going to do it, competitive categories, we were going to follow their lead. So I just wanted to chime in.
So we're also waiting for the SecAF to approve the reserve and guard use of the line competitive categories as well. So that's kind of what we're waiting for. It was approved for the active duty, but not for us yet. And that's being staffed. Okay, next question. It's a repeat of something that you answered, but I think worth delving into a little bit more, and we may need Colonel Hoffman's help for this one. Where do IMAs go? It says to talk to your MPF MPS. We don't have one of those to get to update our records. Duty titles, participation, missing OPRs. It says to go to the MPF MPS. Can you quickly reiterate the answer you gave before.
Okay, you're talking to me, sir, yes?
Yes, I am. And then
Okay.
if Colonel Hoffman can add to it, depending on the answer.
Okay, so if you're an IMA, you should have an MPF that you in process with. Typically, that's going to be the MPF on the base that you're assigned. It could differ, but typically for our IMAs, because they are assigned to a active duty passcode, the active duty MPF or FSS should be your servicing agency. If they're not, you can always contact ARPC and we will try to help you out to figure out who should be servicing you. We've worked with the debt in the past to try to figure this stuff out.
Colonel Hoffman, do you have it? Okay, go ahead.
All right, another good resource is your URC. So a lot of the defense agencies out there have a different structure. Some have an Air Force element that have MIL-PDS access. They can do those things like an MPF. So it varies, but a good start is the detachment and your URC.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How many days prior to the board will the officer selection record be visible in PRADA in the selection board folder?
We're talking about, so a person going to PRADA, can they see their officer selection record? That was the question?
Yes, and when? When can they look at it, look up at the OSR in PRADA?
Okay, so PRADA is going to show your entire record. Once you've met a board, typically we pull the information from the board from EBOS and we upload it and push it into PRADA. So you can see the OPRs, the decorations, anything that was seen by the board to include your PRF will be out there on the OSR. If you haven't met a board yet, you may not have an OSR in PRADA. So that's why we tell everyone, look at your record online as shown in PRADA and make sure the information is correct.
Okay, let me try this again because I think they're referring to the officer selection record prior to the board. How, you discussed that the MPF is supposed to send it to you. How does someone, when will that be available for someone prior to the board?
So the only thing that the MPF has that they push to the member is going to be the officer pre-selection brief. That's not the same thing as the OSR. It's totally different. So the officer pre-selection brief should be available to members 130 days prior to the board convening. Because the MPFs get that information, they're able to pull it from AFPROMs approximately 140 days prior to the board.
Okay. Regarding core flag ID, what direction were recent promotion boards given for officers that have been outside their core ID AFSC for a long time? And primarily in the 16G AFSC, to what extent outside of the core AFSC negatively impact officers' promotion chances? Let me take a hack at this because we in the reserve have not started the core flag, the line competitive categories that will start with the 06 board, we think, as of right now. So there have been no boards that have used the core flag ID as it's just simply line. So did I miss anything else from that question, Lieutenant Colonel Delcor?
Well, I think they're asking if they've been out of a specific, their core flag AFSC for a long time and working in like a specialty AFSC. I'm assuming they're saying, how are they going to meet the board? From what we understand from our EPP discussions with them, you are going to meet the board. You're going to be meeting it based on whatever your core flag ID is. So whatever it is how you're going to meet the competitive category. So if you're, let's say you're a pilot and you've been outside of the career field for years and years and years working in 16G, I think was the example they used. Because there's not a core flag ID for 16G for those specialty AFSCs, you're going to be competing against your previous core flag ID, which is pilot.
Okay. I think we may have some further questions on that in the panel as well. So we'll work through that. When will the reserve start using the new competitive categories? I answered that. That's right now it's planned for the 06 board. Can you speak to the majors reserve PV board that met in January 2020? No, we cannot. It is currently being approved by the SECAF, and until she approves the results of the board, we cannot talk about it, but we expect it to come out shortly. Will there be any changes to the PV process given the changes to early promotions on the active duty side? I think you can handle that. You got it, Lieutenant?
I can. So BTZ and PV are totally different programs. As of right now, there is no discussion on the reserve side of doing away with PV. So as of right now, PV boards are going to continue. We're not following suit with REGAF by doing away with BTZ.
Awesome. For reservists serving in the headquarters Air Force, not AFRE, what is the best office to assist with any promotion board issues, correcting errors, requesting missing OBB, getting added to MEL, since Pentagon MPF refers Air Force reservists to ARPC? I'm going to turn that one over to Colonel Hoffman.
So the MPF does have a reserve liaison, and it's the MPF in the Pentagon, and it's Senior Master Sergeant Felicia Carrington. And she's got full AFPROMS access and can make all those changes. So if you're having issues, please contact her.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Question. Can you see your built eOSR in Prada 30 days prior to a board? I think there are a lot of questions about how to see the pre-selection brief. This is for Lieutenant Colonel Delcourt.
Again, if it's the pre-selection brief, which is that one-page snapshot of your duty information, it's not going to be in Prada. It's not going to be in your eOSR. You have to get that through your servicing MPS. However, if you're asking, can you see your eOSR in Prada, the answer is going to be yes, because Prada is your online record, and it's the same thing as your electronic officer selection record. It's just more inclusive on Prada.
And how much earlier before the board starts can you see that eOSR in Prada?
So eOSR, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the last time I'm at a promotion board, I could see it, I forget if it was 30 days or 60 days prior to the board meeting, that I could see the way my record was going to look meeting the board. Not necessarily the pre-selection brief or the OPB, but to check to make sure that the OPRs and decorations and any other documentation that would actually meet the board was in there.
So I know when the arms contractors, when they do that initial review and push the eOSRs out in the system, they typically do that 5 months prior to the board convening. When you can actually see it in Prada, I'm not sure. But again, like I said, if you can see all of your information in Prada, if you can see all of your OPRs and everything, that information is going to be in your eOSR for the board. So if you can see it, that's what we pull, and that's what the board members are going to see.
Okay. Yeah, I think that covers it. One note, I'll just put this out there. I do know that because of COVID, the contractor's not looking over records. So yet again, it's even more important for you to look at your own records and ensure that they are accurate. The records meet the board, not anything that is outside of the record. So if it's not reflected in your record, then board members cannot score it.